Well, here we are. Here we go, friends. Another week and another day of what we hope to be talk radio excellence. May I be the first to say good afternoon? It's 12:04. It is afternoon. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy. I'm here till 3 o'clock. It is Monday, April 3rd, 2023. It's our episode 311. I have just returned from a robust rally today outside of the state capitol on the Legislative Plaza. That's where it started. It began as a rally and ended as a march. As any number of, there were hundreds, literally hundreds of individuals marching for several purposes that we will discuss, at least in the first hour of the show today. We will talk with you on the phones. We'll also welcome you on the super text lines, as we always do, 615-737-9986. That telephone number, if you're so inspired, or super text line, that's the same number. And you can get in either way to ask any question of your choosing or to offer comments about the topics of the day. We will discuss Donald Trump's indictment this week. He will be arrested. He will be mug-shotted. He will be fingerprinted. And these are all things that will bolster his attempt to become the 47th president of the United States of America after being the 45th president of the United States of America. It's his week to shine, baby. And we'll discuss it on the show today. Governor Bill Lee, on a more serious note, Governor Bill Lee, because I don't think this indictment is serious at all. On a more serious note, Governor Bill Lee is set to offer at some point today legislation that would put an armed presence in every school in the state of Tennessee, public school in the state of Tennessee. It would also offer monetary incentive for private institutions of learning to provide armed guards in their places as well. This is not a money thing, but it might be a manpower situation. We will talk about that today and the possibility of this getting through in the several weeks that we have left to go in the legislative session. We will eventually, at some point, talk about the most elaborate April Fool's Day prank that I've ever seen. By the way, Belle Kay's behind the glass, making sure that everything that comes out of her speaker sounds as good as possible. Mac Morey will be back at some point or another. We actually offer the young man a lunch break. Belle, hope you had a good weekend.
No justice, no pizza.
No justice, no pizza.
This isn't about the weekend. It's about justice and pizza.
And so what you're saying, Belle, is that if you get pizza, there will be justice.
Yes.
But until such time, wait, you want justice or pizza?
I'd rather have pizza.
So shouldn't you be saying no pizza, no justice?
That doesn't rhyme as well.
It's true. Yes, on the Super Talk TV side of things, and you're welcome to join us there, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, you'll see our sign of the day indicates, and it's inspired by young Belle Kay, no justice, no pizza, which means about as much as some of the sloganeering that I heard earlier today. Look, I'm not against protest, peaceful as it was. Obviously, the Constitution of the United States of America guarantees our right to do said same. I remember in 8th grade when my civics instructor, my U.S. history, was it U.S.? Yeah, it was U.S. history and government. In the 8th grade, we had to memorize the First Amendment of the Constitution, and I hated it. Hated the whole concept of it. But I'm glad I did, because I can just at a drop of a hat tell you that Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Peaceably to assemble and to petition, no justice, no peace, the government for a redress of grievances. So I don't begrudge anyone that was on the Legislative Plaza today, and I believe that many of them are well-meaning people. They are simply misguided in how to solve what is obviously a scourge in the United States of America with mass shootings. We have differences about how to solve these issues. However, I'm open, ready, willing, and able to listen to the other side's argument as to why their solutions are best. It occurred to me 2 hours ago. It occurs to me right now that the other side is not willing to listen to any of us about what our possible solutions are. I promise you, I will bet you dollars to donuts that as Governor Bill Lee prepares legislation to present in the Tennessee General Assembly that would give our public education system the opportunity to hire and staff armed personnel known as SROs, school resource officers, in every public school in the state of Tennessee, leftist Democrats will come out against this for some reason or another. I promise you, as I sit here today. Why? Because it's not the solution that they've decided is the only solution that they're willing to discuss or accept. What is that solution? Well, so Dan Mandis and I decide, just to give you a little bit of the lay of the land here, we hear that there's going to be a March for Our Lives. This is an organization. March for Our Lives is an actual group that was started in the aftermath of the Stoneman Douglas shooting in Parkland, Florida. Pardon me. The most visible. I think one of the March for Our Lives students that started that organization in the aftermath of the Stoneman Douglas shooting, I think she was there today. But I did not see David Hogg. Maybe he appeared after I had to leave to get back to the radio station to prepare for the show. But David Hogg is the most visible of the students that in the aftermath of the tragedy of Stoneman Douglas created this organization whose sole effort is to ban guns. In a very childlike fashion, they believe if we simply pass legislation to ban guns, all of this will go away. Well, to my knowledge, the Covenant School was a gun-free zone. Was it not? Do I have that right? So if laws prevented criminals from breaking them by their very existence, one would presume that none of this would have happened a week ago. So Dan and I decided after his show this morning when Cameron comes on air to Uber down and check out what was going on. I had the timer. I thought I initially posted a tweet, and unlike leftist trolls on social media, I will correct myself if I'm wrong, and I thought the rally was starting at 10:13, the time of the shooting last week. Apparently, that's when they demanded that the students walk out. And the rally itself was starting at 10:45. So initially, I thought the crowd was pretty paltry, but the crowd picked up, obviously, at the time of the rally, and then eventually they marched all around downtown and whatnot. But Dan Mandis and I trekked down there to check it out for ourselves. And he and I, independently and together, collectively, we asked questions of some of the protesters, inquiring as to exactly what they were there for, what they wanted, what they were there for. And ultimately, we discovered that the most specific thing that we could get to was that they wanted to ban assault weapons. And that's where I'm going to start after I talk about the sloganeering. And I'm going to talk about the sloganeering after I talk about Pamela Furr, who's on the SuperTalk 99.7 WT and Matt Murphy hotline right now. Hello, Pamela. How are you?
Well, I am fine. Hold on. Let me get off there. I apologize. I'm fine. I actually have some information, some breaking news, I would say, that is concerning for some lawmakers. The protesters have made their way into the building that houses the offices of our lawmakers. That's the Cordell Hull building. As you well know, the lawmakers are not at the state capitol right now. They don't gavel in until later on this afternoon. But you have some that have entered the building, and so lawmakers and their staffers are a little concerned in all the offices. They've locked the doors. So you have staff members that are concerned, and you have protesters yelling mostly outside of Cameron Sexton's office, but they're yelling up and down the halls of the Cordell Hull building. Now that building houses some other state offices, but they also include our state lawmaker offices. There's also concern, yes, you have to go to security if you're 18 or older. So if you're younger than 18, you're not necessarily going through security. So they're concerned right now.
Well, I wouldn't blame them for being concerned, especially considering that whatever they're trying to accomplish, they're not going to accomplish it unless it's to shut the building down. I don't know, because as you noted, Pamela, the lawmakers do not go back into session. I think the Senate side goes in at 4 o'clock this afternoon, the House side at 5 o'clock this afternoon. So
Yeah.
none of them are there. Now, whether the assembled crowd recognize that or not, I seriously doubt that most people in the crowd know that the lawmakers aren't in session right now.
Yeah. So those who do know, I guess, have headed on over to the Cordell Hull building. But here's the thing: we don't know necessarily if Cameron's even in his office there yet or not. Because he has to drive from out of town to be here. So I don't know. I don't know what they're trying to prove, but again, you have staffers and possibly some lawmakers who are very concerned. And so I started getting some text messages a moment ago. And so I went ahead. I wanted to go ahead and call you and let you know at least that's happening. So it's not just the state capitol, now the really rowdy ones, and you don't know what kind of infiltrators are making their way to the 6th floor on the Cordell Hull building.
Well, and if you're wondering why that matters, and Pamela, I know you know, but if you're listening to us right now and saying, well, that's the people's place, why does it matter if they're gathering outside of Cameron Sexton's office? I also know, and I don't want to give too much attention to this, but there are trolls on social media that are trying to figure out where Cameron Sexton lives. And they're directing people to go to his home. They're doxing him at his house. And I believe for the purpose of influencing people to go and attempt to protest outside of the home of some of these lawmakers. And that can get very dangerous very quickly. Just ask Brett Kavanaugh.
Right. Yeah. And I've never supported something like that. Your home is your home, and, you should leave anybody. I don't care who you are, what side of the aisle you're on, leave them alone at home. But if you want to protest in public, I have a problem with protesters on the floor and in the building. Outside the Cordell Hull building, have at it. Go for it.
That's
yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Well, and
this is where you get into some dangerous territory. And quite frankly, I mean, I don't know about you. Maybe you could handle it a little better than I could. But if people are within 2 inches of my face yelling at me, I don't handle that very well. So you've got some staffers and maybe even some lawmakers that are. This is going to really jolt them for the day.
Well, and rightly so, because you don't know the intent of some of the individuals that are behind the right. signs and behind the masks, and which I saw some today, and behind the yelling in and of itself. But yes, once again, there's a line between legitimate protest, peaceful protest, and doing what the Constitution allows for you to do, and that's all well and good. Between that harassment, right? There's a problem. I'm glad you brought that up. If you see at any point during the day, Pamela, because that's a fluid situation, and I know you've got eyeballs on it and you've got sources down in that general complex, just feel free to join in and hit us up anytime. Okay. All right, there's Pamela Furr. Thank you for joining us on the hotline, talking about they're now entering into some of the buildings down there. The Cordell, I think it's the Cordell Hull, I think, is that right? Building, which houses many of the legislators' offices. Obviously, the state capitol, I've only been down several times, but you folks probably know better than me that the state capitol essentially houses the legislature when they are in session. It does not have the room to house them in offices, and there's several different offices. The Snodgrass Tower is one of them. I think that's what it's called, and in the Legislative Plaza area, there are several different office buildings there. Many of whom named are unfamiliar to me, but in that general complex, there's the Cordell Hull building, which has a lot of the legislative folks, and obviously the offices of the Speaker of the House, and that is what they are targeting. They're also, as I mentioned, targeting the Speaker of the House's home, which to me is a line in the sand as well. If we're going to disagree on political matters, then there is a way for you to protest these political matters, to attempt to influence politicians by descending on their home and through threats of it. I mean, these are the types of actions of the Klan, folks. This concept of going to someone's home, scaring their family, trying to influence individuals to make certain actions through fear and intimidation, that's the manner in which the Klan did its business. That is off limits in a civilized society. Now, many of the individuals down at the facility today did not seem to want a civil conversation about these. matters. They wanted, well, what do we want? Gun control. When do we want it? Now was one of the chants. I'll say this, and it never ceases to amaze me when I'm in a mostly left of center crowd, especially younger people. I'm not knocking it. I was there once. I understand it. I can understand if you are a 17-year-old or a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old, why you would feel like you're a part of something greater than yourself and you're initiating some form of change or whatnot. The problem is were a lot of adults in this crowd that haven't grown up and don't recognize that these are issues that are more complex than simply sloganeering, what do we want? Gun control, when do we want it? Now. Or no justice, no peace. Still have no idea what that means in relation to this matter. I mean, literally, do I have to explain to you that there are three branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial, and that the judicial branch, which is where the justice would come from, has nothing to do with this? Do I have to explain that to these folks? I guess I do. But, of course, if I try to explain it to them, they have to be quiet for a second, and they made it clear that they will not be silenced. Okay. Well, then what do you want? Gun control. When do we want it? Now. And you just wash, rinse, and repeat the sloganeering. But when you get beyond it, it seems that most in the audience today at the rally wanted some movement on a banning of assault weapons in the state of Tennessee. The conversation grinds to a halt, however, when you ask one of these folks, as I did today, what are you looking to accomplish? What do you hope? Now, I just omitted the fact that the legislatures weren't actually there. And I said, well, what do you want the legislature to hear from you today? And we want a ban on assault weapons. Now, I guess I could have gone any number of ways at that point. I could have said, okay, what is that? They're weapons of war. What do you mean by that?
They're black and scary.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I went a different route, and I asked this question. Okay, let's say we get assault weapons banned. What are we going to do about the 98% of other gun murders that happen in America? It's at that point that most of these activists walk away from you because they will not be silenced and they're really not interested in a conversation about real-world solutions that will actually do something to prevent another Covenant School attack. And that is the end of that story. It's 12:22 on Super Talk. All right, we'll get into some of the other matters resulting from the week that has been since the Covenant School shooting, which happened last Monday, of course, to include why we have not gotten insight into the motivations behind the shooter herself. One thing that I did not hear as I was standing in attendance at the rally, it began on the plaza, the Legislative Plaza in front of the State House. Eventually, they marched around, which delayed my Uber driver, which I was very upset about. That's a joke, but. And they march around the Capitol. They get back to the Capitol. They got into the Cordell Hull. And they are now inside of the Cordell Hull State Office building after chanting and gathering around. One of the things that I noticed is there's not a tremendous amount of organization, and I guess maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. And there's not a lot for these folks to do except to chant. There are no time for speakers or no speakers present. No time for getting into the meat and potatoes of exactly what we're here for and what we want to accomplish and get into specifics about any of that. They just want to chant and march and chant some more and feel a part of something, I guess. So students and others, it was mostly young people. I mean, as it should be if this was a student-led march. They gathered at the state capitol calling for gun control efforts. I've got a couple of videos that I'll eventually post up. And they made their way inside of the Cordell Hull State Office building, and they're now occupying, I guess, one of the floors of the building. They're sitting in front of some of the offices. They are chanting, and several lawmakers apparently are speaking with them, including House Majority Leader William Lamberth, I am told. He is now speaking with the students. Now, they're being peaceful. They're sitting and stamping their feet. And I'm looking at a video of it right now, as a matter of fact. And essentially, occupying the space. Now, no one can actually leave their offices, and there are only staff members, and a smattering of lawmakers are already in their offices awaiting session, going into session later on at 4 o'clock for the Senate side, 5 o'clock for the House side. That said, at some point, you are disrupting the daily flow of business. And at some point, you have to be told to leave. As long as you believe in peaceable assembly and you recognize that if you begin disrupting the daily activities of the state legislature, then they have to move you to prevent those disruptions, then you are to recognize that you have choices to make. Either you move your protest out of the hallways where you're disrupting the daily flow of business. You've made your point. You've been there for about an hour. I would expect that some of these young people, mollycoddled as they may be, are going to get hungry at some stage. And they'll get off for a late lunch. And they'll move about their way. If that doesn't happen, then obviously they have to be moved. And maybe some of them want that. I've noticed that typically in scenes like this, and I love it. I mean, I think it's great. But when you begin to rise to the level of disrupting the day-to-day activities of the state legislature, well, then you either have to move to a different location or you have to be removed to a different location. 3076 writes, is this a leftist state insurrection? No, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say that. This is the people's business, and it's the people's house. And just as individuals would have been allowed inside of the people's house on January 6th, had they gone through in an orderly fashion, I mean, I presume that they were being allowed in there prior to busting down some of the barricades. People are going to be allowed inside of the State House, as they should be. So long as you go through the proper procedure to make sure that you're not armed with something that could do harm to other individuals. Because, and by the way, I don't mind that. I never have. If the state presents a real and present danger to individuals within a facility and they provide me adequate security along with others, then I understand why there would be metal detectors in the State House. Now, some Second Amendment advocates don't believe there should be, and they should be allowed to wear their piece on their side when they walk into the gallery, and I get it. I get the other side of that. That said, I believe in protest. I believe that this is a good thing. I believe that, eventually a lot of these skulls of mush, and I say that with love. I mean, they're 17-year-olds. I mean, I knew everything at the age of 17. Everything. You couldn't tell me one thing that I wasn't sure that I was right on. It reminds me of that old quote from Mark Twain, one of my favorites. Mark Twain said, "I left home when I was 17 years of age, and my father was the dumbest man I'd ever met on planet Earth. I came back home 10 years later, and at the age of 27, it's amazing how much he learned in 10 years." All right, we'll continue in a moment. Take some calls. It's 12:32. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief is located in Franklin, and they want to see you. Within the sound of my voice, pain relief is just a phone call away. I'll tell you, folks, I know this from personal experience. I had pain radiating from my neck into my shoulders, and I thought it was stress-related. I did not realize that I had a compression in my upper neck. Dr. Wendy identified that compression during our initial consultation. We took care of it. I went through decompression therapy, and I am a huge fan, and you should be as well. If you have a compression in your spine that is causing you pain, that you have to take pills for, let's get that solved with a visit to the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief in Franklin. They can get you in, and just in no time, you can get an examination. They can walk you through what they want to do. They can talk to you about where the pain originates, and we can get off the pills. We can stop considering the surgery, and we get back to life, living your life to its fullest, pain-free. That is what it's all about. Give them a call now. Start the spring into the summer off the right way with a visit to the Dr. Gill Center. Pain-free, friends. 615-882-4838, 882-4838 for the Dr. Gill Center for Back, Neck, and Chronic Pain Relief. Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Matt Murphy, and you. It is the Lunch Bunch. It's 12:37. Glad to have you along with us. It's a duo for lunch. There's Bell K behind the glass, Matt Murphy here. Sometimes Mac Morey joins us for lunch, sometimes not. He'll be back and deliver the news for you a little bit later on this afternoon on this Monday, April 3rd. I have to believe, by the way, I'll talk more extensively about this later on. Have you seen the new Bud Light thing, Bell?
Yes.
What if I were to tell you? What if I were to tell you it was the most elaborate April Fool's Day prank in history?
It wouldn't surprise me.
I would love it.
But it's not.
But it's not. No, if it were an April, I considered this over the weekend. And I'll tell you guys what it is. If you've not heard, it's delicious. I won't get into it now, but
I don't know if delicious is the
well,
right
I mean,
word.
it's just awesome. I mean, it's just, look, if Bud Light decided years ago they didn't want me as a customer because they continued to make sucky beer. So, I mean,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
it's just awful. So, I mean, if I want to drink that level of beer water, I'm going Coors Light every time.
That or just like, get the goat you've been talking about and
All right. I mean, it's not very good. So, I mean, they didn't want me as a customer from the jump, but apparently they really don't want a lot of customers nowadays because they've decided they want to go a different direction in terms of the branding of their product. And when I first saw this over the weekend, I thought, this is good. This is an April Fool's Day prank. But then I realized they can't do an April Fool's Day prank like this. Otherwise, they would have the woke trans community on their asses. So, of course, they're not doing that. More on that coming up next hour or maybe into the 2 o'clock hour. I'll figure it out. In the meantime, we've got a protest ongoing at the Cordell Hull building. Apparently, William Lamberth is there. Apparently, Representative Justin Jones, who faces expulsion from the Tennessee House of Representatives because he took over the body last week and attempted to foment a riot within the state. I don't think I'm overstating this at all. I've seen the various videos. He was attempting to rally the crowd within the gallery to stop the state's business. Tell me what that is if not a riot within the State House. And look, your average Joe and Jane Tennessean doing that is one thing. A sitting representative, there are ramifications. But anyway, old Justin Jones was there in the hallways with the young people, and I have not heard this audio. But apparently it's an exchange between William Lamberth and Justin Jones.
Utilize them properly. Let me ask y'all this.
Why don't we ban assault rifles? You don't need those. Those are just for army.
These are war weapons.
Everyday people should not own assault
What are you
rifles at
doing
all.
with your military war weapons?
Hold on, let him answer
I'd like
that.
to ask, what do you feel like that would do to make us safer as a society?
Because assault rifles only used by.
Hang on, I'd like to hear this, young man, if y'all don't mind.
I'm saying it might.
Hold up, guys. Would y'all like to hear him or not?
No, they want to hear. They want to hear from you. They want to hear from you.
Justin, we've heard enough out of you, young man.
Yeah.
That was Justin Jones.
Yes, please continue.
I feel like assault rifles should only be owned by people in the army. There's no point in everyday.
Okay, so this young man, and I hope you're able to hear this exchange. I'm going to play a little stop and go with this because it's pretty. It's pretty.
Utilize them.
By the way, I applaud William Lamberth, the House Majority Leader, for stepping out and attempting to speak to these folks. I don't know that it's not a fool's errand, but
Utilize them properly.
Let
me ask y'all this.
Why don't we ban assault rifles? You don't need those. Those are just for army.
These are war weapons.
Everyday people should not own
y'all
assault rifles at all.
okay. So everyday people should not own assault rifles. What does he mean by assault rifles? I would love for him to define that. And if any of you are listening and maybe you're just leaving the rally, I'm open to this conversation.
It's weapons of war.
Okay, and what is a weapon of war?
It's weapons that they would use to fight in a war.
All right, but none of these weapons would be used to fight in a war because none of these weapons are fully automatic.
Well, That doesn't matter. You're a racist.
That's right. That's about how it goes in 30 seconds or less. So, I mean, the obvious question is, well, we need to ban assault weapons, ban assault rifles. What is that? What is that? I mean, if you're going to come into a debate, maybe you should arm yourself with information. And I'm willing to listen if you do. What are assault rifles? Like a rifle that looks really awful? I could pull up, and I might do this during the break. There's all kind of memes where you show the same type of gun you show, like a 5.56 or a 2.23, and you show it dressed out like a hunting rifle, and then you show it dressed out in all of the gnarly looking stuff, and it's the exact same gun. And they want to ban one is okay because, oh, well, that's a hunting rifle, and the other's not because that's an assault rifle.
To show my firearm ignorance on more advanced looking ARs, what is the thing over the barrel that has the holes in it? And
you're talking about
no, it goes over the barrel, and it's like it's got the holes in it. It almost looks like it's for cooling or something.
Well, that's what it is. It's to protect you from the heat of the barrel of the gun.
Okay.
It and I don't know exactly what it's called. Somebody can text me, but it performs the same function as a wooden piece that you see down a hunting rifle. That wooden piece is there to protect the barrel and to protect you.
And I would imagine if you took that off of it doesn't matter. Gun, that 99% of the people would say it's not an assault rifle.
Well, that's right. If they see that, they think it is, because they think that performs some function outside of the cooling function of allowing the barrel to cool. Wayne is in Nashville with a thought on the school shooting from last week. Hello, Wayne. Glad you called. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you today? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, Wayne. Go right ahead.
In the argument with the statistics on school shootings, the other day I received a Facebook message, and a person had listed, like, I bet there was 150 schools and colleges where there had been school shootings and people shot. So, they're arguing that we've had all these school shootings, but what they don't do is they don't go into the FBI statistics showing, because they say there's more children killed every year with firearms than there are in car accidents. But so they throw in this natural assumption that this is all from school shootings, that all these children are dying in school. Well, the stats, if you go back and read them, they cluster ages 1 through 19. And of course,
yeah, I mean, and we went over this a little. I'm not trying to rush you or get in front of you, Wayne, but yeah, talk about what they do to get to that figure, because they have to include the 17, 18, and 19-year-olds.
Right, and they don't say how many of those deaths. Matter of fact, I've seen one set of statistics that show from 14 to 25. So it's a matter how they clump the ages and stuff. What's a child, a juvenile? That's 17 or younger, right? And then 18-year-olds are considered adults legally. But yet they want to clump it all the way up to 19 just so they can pad their figures, but they never go back and say how many of these children, quote-unquote children, died as a result of gang-related activity in a high-crime area that just happened to be
right. And they also exclude children between birth and 1.
Right.
Because there are a lot of issues that go on with those youngsters, those infants, that lead to death that they can't include, because otherwise it would completely destroy the argument. And I heard that multiple times today. And I'm sorry, I've got to run. I appreciate the call. Multiple times today I heard that children die at the hands of gun violence more than any other cause. And Wayne is exactly right. You have to exclude children between birth and 1 year of age. I think those are children too, but you have to exclude them. And then you have to include the 18 and 19-year-olds, which in every state that I know of, 18 is the age of majority. 18 is the age that you can get in to a military branch of service, for goodness sake, and carry a real weapon of war. But they include that because the number of gun deaths rise considerably in the 18 and 19-year-old bracket, primarily due to, as Wayne mentions, there's a lot of gang-related violence. There's a lot of inner-city violence that goes into that. All right, so we're getting our answer on the super text line, and yes, it's called a thermocell hand guard. So it's a hand guard. It is not the rail. I know what you guys are thinking of. The rail's on top of the rifle, and that allows for the mounting of scopes. It allows for the mounting of flashlights and other things. But you're obviously talking about the handguard that looks really mean and dangerous. And I've got a lot of you sending me in the photographs, the memes that have been running around about the the guns with equal amounts of firepower, but one looks like a hunting rifle and the other looks like a quote unquote bad gun that you would use in war. And one of the super texters notes, and it's a pretty good question, when you call it a weapon of war, the proper response is, what war? Which war are you talking about? You talking about the War of 1812? Lady, this has a hell of a lot more firepower than any weapon they had in the War of 1812. What are you talking about? You talking about the Spanish-American War? You talking about the War of Northern Aggression or what? What war are you talking about?
They used ARs in Afghanistan and in Iraq.
Did they? Are you being funny? I don't think they did.
Absolutely they did. And you're a racist if you disagree.
Oh, okay. You are being funny. Sometimes I can never tell. I gotta get my sense of humor back on. I've just been surrounded by liberals for the last 2.5 hours. Gotta help me out there. Chris is
you're pretty close to having it back.
Well, Chris is in Warren County. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good. How are y'all guys?
Just great, man. Thank you.
A couple of things. Everybody's getting so off track with this. I heard you put the thing up between William Lambert and some kid, and I like it. I personally know William. I grew up in the same town he did. He's been the same exact person since we've been kids, and it is not shocking that he's in a high political state that he is. But this point about the gun control and AR stuff. Let's take the incident last week. It wouldn't have mattered if that girl did not have a gun. Girl, guy, whatever you want to call them, they would have found some type of way to do what they were going to do, their plan of action. Same thing as Travis Rankin did with the Waffle House shooting. They will find a way to do that. So it doesn't matter if you take away the gun, minimize weapons, minimize what they call warlike weapons. They're going to find a way. They're getting this mental health thing totally flipped. I know last week I was listening to you, and a lot of guys called in about whether or not how this person got guns. It depends on what they're diagnosed with. So if they're diagnosed with just like depression disorder or emotion disorder, that doesn't deter them from getting a gun legally. It has to be something more, conduct disorder, sometimes schizophrenia, kind of like the Travis Rankin deal. His guns were taken away from him, but his parents chose to give them back to him. So that's their fault. So people get so emotional, tore up about this stuff that then you see these protests downtown where you got kids, and I'm not nothing toward the kids, but they're bringing up history that they probably don't know about, and I'm sure they hadn't learned about in today's society. So, conservatives got to stand ground and keep doing what we're doing, and it'll develop out. But the intent of people is going to always overrun what they use to take people's lives. If Jonestown can use Kool-Aid, do you not think that they can come up with some other stuff to use besides weapons one day? So I'll shut up and I'll let you speak.
Well, Chris, I appreciate the thoughts. I'm not taking away from anybody that's down there. Their emotions are running high, but most of these folks who are down there wouldn't know what AR stood for. They don't understand Armalite. They don't understand that there is no distinction or different functional difference between a hunting rifle and many of these types of rifles that they're calling assault rifles. So if someone says we need to ban assault rifles, you need to say, well, what do you mean by assault rifle? And they'll roll their eyes and they'll look at you like you ate a bug, like some did to me. But at some point, you corner them through a lack of logic on their part. 1253, Supertalk 99.7 WTN. The protests are ongoing at the Cordell Hall building, and we'll revisit that coming up in just a moment on Supertalk 99.7 WTN.
From ABC News, I'm Dave Packard. Former President Trump's private jet is in the air en route to New York City, where an indictment awaits him tomorrow. That indictment sealed, but the grand jury is looking into hush payments to a former adult film actress. ABC News Chief Washington correspondent Jonathan Karl.
This is the first of several criminal investigations that Donald Trump faces. It's not inconceivable that there could be multiple more indictments before we get to Memorial Day.
And indeed, the Washington Post is reporting on new evidence of possible obstruction in the classified documents case. It reports that sources say Trump looked through boxes of government records after he was subpoenaed to return them, and investigators suspect classified documents were then moved to a storage facility. Overseas, reaction to tomorrow's Trump indictment.
In Russia, pro-Kremlin outlets have been using the news of the indictment to paint former President Trump as a victim of a witch hunt, and that he's the target of political persecution. In China, most officials there have yet to comment, but have used this time to denounce U.S.-style democracy, calling the governance of the United States rotten. And in Iran, some state news agencies are using a computer-generated image of Trump fighting police during a fake arrest to deliver the news of his indictment. Ike Achachi, ABC News, Washington.
Tomorrow, Finland expected to join NATO. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg says Sweden could be admitted soon. And Ukraine?
The first step towards any membership of Ukraine into NATO is to ensure that Ukraine prevails. And that's also the reason why NATO allies and partners have provided unprecedented support for Ukraine.
The Russian State Duma today saying it will arrest anyone who agrees with the International Criminal Court's arrest warrant for Russian President Putin, accusing him of war crimes. This is ABC News.
Hey, friends, it's Matt Murphy to speak for Defense Systems and for Defense Systems ownership, to include Brink Fiddler, whom you heard on our show on Friday give a very emotional testimony in the hour that he spent with us on Friday discussing his participation in training of the Covenant School and how that training came to life, sadly, a week ago Monday, and so many of the teachers saved so many lives that day as they understood what to do in the event of a shooting. And we all want to believe that it will not happen on our watch or in our workplace or in our school or in our church. But sadly, these are dangerous times, and hope is not a plan. It is time to get trained, and this involves training yourself to understand your workplace, to understand what to do in the event of a calamity that descends upon your workplace. And Brink has asked of me to ask of you to be patient with him during these times. A lot of folks are calling and asking what they need to do, especially in Middle Tennessee, in the aftermath of last Monday. So give him a call, leave a message, I promise. He, Tracy, or one of the crew at Defense Systems will get back to you. It's 236-6484, 236-6484. Go ahead and schedule an appointment with Brink and his team today. It's time to get trained in Nashville. It's Defense Systems, defensesystems.com. Here we are. Here we go. It's hour number 2 of the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk 99.7 WTN this Monday, April 3rd. Hope you're well. Hope you had a nice weekend. Nasty weather. Our thoughts are going out to the folks who experienced some of the worst of the weather. Readyville, one of the locations. Adamsville, I believe it is. Is it Readyville or Readytown? Am I screwing this up?
Pretty sure it's Readyville.
I thought it was too. I was reporting on it Saturday morning, early Saturday morning. For those up and at 'em in the midst of that storm, Dan Mandis, Brian Wilson, and myself all on air Friday night into Saturday morning about 1:30 in the morning, broadcasting. I think Brian was out in, as he would call it, bucolic Watertown. Dan was over Mount Juliet Way, and I was here in the studios in downtown Nashville broadcasting during what would become a deadly storm. I think 15 individuals lost their lives as a result of the storm system that moved through and dropped some tornadoes down on us. It is that time of year, and we live in that part of the world, and your thoughts go out to heartfelt prayers go out to the people who lost property and, God forbid, lost loved ones as a result. We're also remembering the 6 that lost their lives at the Covenant School a week out. There was a protest that happened at the Legislative Plaza today. I don't know where they are now. They were in the Cordell Hull building about 20 minutes ago. We'll check in with that in just a moment. We were down there. I was down there earlier. Dan Mandis and I went down, of course, Dan of Nashville's Morning News, and witnessed with our eyes the gathering of the individuals who eventually marched around the downtown area, marched to the Cordell Hull building, and have taken up occupancy within the building. William Lambert is the House Majority Leader, and kudos to him for going out and speaking to some of the assembled protesters, trying to speak with them and have a reasonable conversation. In the midst of that, Representative Justin Jones inserted himself in the conversation, and sadly, Justin Jones tries to make everything about him and has attempted to successfully do that today as well. Here's some of the melee happening in the hallways of the Cordell Hull building some 20 minutes ago.
Legislature and three of his colleagues.
That's also not true.
And so
I thought we listened to them.
But hold on, but what we're not going to do is we don't need to boo him or flip him off because he already is trying to portray what happened last week as an insurrection. And so we hope.
Justin, how about we stop the lies and listen to these kids that have come here? I'd like to hear from y'all. Now everything he just said is completely untrue.
Everything he just said is completely untrue. And he's right, actually. Justin Jones said, well, the majority leader is trying to expel us from the body. That's not true. If that happens, that will come from the Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, and he will take a vote of the entire body, I would expect, and do what the body determines is the appropriate punishment for the 3 individuals taking over the well of the House of Representatives during session out of order and attempting to usurp the basic authority that leadership has in running the body. Usurp, a usurpation. Also known as an insurrection. I don't know. You can call it what you want. I don't know that I would use those inflammatory words because I don't engage in that type of nonsensical junk inflammatory rhetoric like the political left enjoys. But at the same time, I mean, if you want to, I'm not against it because that's what it was. Secondarily, Justin Jones, unable to not lie about things standing right in front of the man. Oh, you called it an insurrection. No, that was actually Cameron Sexton who referred to it as an insurrection. And I don't think that it's an inaccurate statement as we spoke to Cameron about it on Friday, exactly what happened, what went down there. All right, so you got that going on, and, you know, you got a lot of this going on. Mm-hmm. A lot of that blood on your hands chant going on. Now, let's dissect this. You know what we're not hearing about very much today from these young people? We're not hearing about the motivations of the shooter herself. We're not hearing about the individual who I choose not to name on this program. I'm not against it necessarily, but I try to shy away from it as much as we can.
You can't criticize her.
And I can't criticize her.
No.
And that's because, wait a minute. Oh, hold on a second. What'd you just say?
You cannot criticize the marginalized.
How did you refer to that person?
Her.
Bell. Hoisted by thy own petard.
Stop pointing at my flaws.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you need to check your pronouns, pal.
You cannot criticize the marginalized. That's a rule.
Mm-hmm. I guess so. See, any other individual with any other motivation set that fits the narrative that the liberal agenda wants to present, they go that way. And then they eventually circle back to guns. Just the easiest example, and look, all shootings are tragic and awful, and if I've learned anything from Brink Fiddler of Defense Systems, it's this. While motivation is important, and while motivation might help see some of those signposts that exist to help us prevent another tragedy along these lines, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of analyzing mass shootings as they happen, because every mass shooter has a different motivation, every single one of them. Some of them might overlap considerably, but every one of them has a different motivation. Hey, can you go to this real quick? I want to jump on this. I'm just looking at it. I just noticed that Governor Lee is currently addressing the Covenant School shooting. It's his first address since he went
steps that we will take going forward. But today we do want to talk about definitive steps that we're making today. Our proposal includes 3 key steps in addition to the bill that is currently before the legislature. First, I believe that we ought to have an armed guard, an armed security guard in every school in Tennessee. Our budget amendment will include $140 million for public schools to hire SROs and highly trained guards. With this funding, we're taking the burden off of teachers and schools and districts. There is no excuse to not have a guard at every school. Second, we will establish a grant fund to make significant physical security upgrades at both public and non-public schools all across the state. Third, we will increase funding for mental health resources. Double the amount of funding that we have for our school-based mental health liaisons, so that we not only have one in every county, but that we have multiple in many counties. These are the 3 pillars. These are the additions that we will add to the provisions that we've already brought forward. Now, what we have done to date, prior to today, funding to place a home that will be in the budget, funding to place a Homeland Security agent in every Tennessee county to prevent threats before they become tragedies, and legislation to increase accountability around school safety, specifically to ensure that exterior doors are locked at all times while students are in the classroom. These are thoughtful, practical solutions that will enhance the safety of students and teachers immediately. But our conversations will continue, and we all agree that there is a serious conversation needed about school safety. It must begin with the recognition that we cannot control evil, but we can do something. In my State of the State address 2 months ago, I said that we will be working on this the rest of my time in office. That was the case before Covenant. It remains the case today. Our work to ensure the safety of Tennessee students and teachers will not stop. Maria and I will continue to lift these families up. We encourage you to do the same and ask that God bring peace to our state. Lieutenant Governor, would you like to say a few words?
That's Governor Bill Lee speaking right now. Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, step into the microphone.
It's a rough problem that we have faced in these last few weeks, and I certainly applaud the governor for what he has already put in the budget, for what we have done since 2019 and made steps, and we're going to continue to make steps. Now, this year, I think, with the paying for the SROs in every school, making sure that schools are safe, will be a giant step, I think, that we're taking this year, and we'll continue year after year to take steps to improve the safety of children, teachers, and personnel that are in our schools. But I'd like to introduce now a good friend and a great leader in the House of Representatives, Cameron Sexton.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And I don't think there's anybody in our state who saw the tragedy on Monday that was not emotional, that didn't cry about that tragedy and the families and the kids and the circumstances. And I know today we're standing up here to send a message that we're about protecting our children, whether they're at school, whether they're at home, whether they're in a community, and providing the resources to make that happen. They should be protected whether they're in private or public school, whether they're at school functions, and no child should feel unsafe when they go to school. I know today and last week when kids returned to school, there's a lot of children who felt unsafe to attend based on the actions of one very evil person on Monday. And so we have to do everything we can to protect our children. I appreciate the governor's announcement about adding SROs into every public school in our state. Let me just say, they're there to secure and be security for the school. But the role that they play internally is much greater than just being security. And when you talk to schools, that's what they will tell you. We also should expand to see if private schools need SROs. We should be able to allow them, if they need the funding, to help them have the funding to provide the same thing. No child in our state, regardless of where their choice of school is, should not feel safe. And then today we had students who were up here on the Hill, and Leader Lambert and Chairman Faison had conversations with them. And you would assume they talked about guns, which is what they did. But the vast majority of that conversation dealt with mental health. Those students talked about mental health. We have a crisis in our state for young, for old, for everybody. We have to do a better job of providing treatment for individuals who need it, especially if they're suicidal or threatening to harm others. The governor's proposal expands this in K through 12 schools, gives the schools the capability to handle students in crisis at that moment of time. But the goal with that funding is not just to handle crisis, but to build it and get into the schools so that they never get to crisis. It's going to take a team approach for us to protect our children, for us to protect our citizens. And some districts have been providing these behavioral health or mental health services in our state. And they've been paying for it themselves. And they have seen great success in reducing the number of disruptions in school, reducing the number of mental health issues in school, increasing attendance, and increasing performance. This piece by the governor will be another key piece into protecting our children in school. And I know that this is just the first step in many steps we're going to talk about, but it's a very important step. I appreciate my colleagues in the House and the Senate and Representative Parkinson, who's here with us, standing up here to tell you this is important to Republicans, to Democrats, to independents, to Tennesseans. Thank you, Leader Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon. Governor Lee, I want to thank you and your staff for bringing forth not just this very, very bold, decisive proposal today for the General Assembly to consider, but I also want to thank you for your leadership over the last 4 years. You have made school safety a priority. I recall back in 2019 when you agreed to fund, I believe it was north of $20 million a year to fund additional school resource officers in school. I also recall, Governor, that you came to me in my office back early this session, and one of your top legislative initiatives for this year was a comprehensive school safety bill, and it was a good bill. But I'm very excited today that we're talking about an even better bill. When you look at the amount of money, Governor, that you're proposing for school safety, school hardening, school resource officers, and as Speaker Sexton said, the very critical component of making sure that access to mental health care is available for all Tennesseans, this proposal, I think, takes us in a very, very big step towards the direction that we need to go. I'm very pleased, Governor, to tell you that I'm prepared, along with my Senate colleagues and my friends in the House, to work with you diligently over the coming days and weeks to not only get this very monumental proposal passed in the General Assembly, but to continue to work with you in the days, weeks, and months ahead to work with our stakeholders back in our local communities to continue to try to identify ways that we can make our kids safer when they go to school each and every day. It's the least that we can do. Our constituents demand it, and we owe it to them to give it our very, very best effort. So I look forward to getting this legislation through committee with my colleagues in the Senate. I want to thank those that are here. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor for being here. I think it's a recognition of how important we think that this initiative is, and look very forward to getting this bill to your desk and any others that we need in order to get legislation passed to make our kids the safest in the nation. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Leader Johnson. Thank you, Governor, for your bold leadership on this issue.
William Lambert.
Speakers and members of the House and the Senate. I know the last week's been rough for everybody. We know evil exists in this world, and we think about it as a hypothetical thing that's out there. But when it lands in one of our schools, when it kills our children, when you have one evil person that decides to just take the innocence of not only the kids in that school, but every school in this state, it's unacceptable. Years ago, we talked about SROs in every school, and we've had that conversation. And the conversation was basically an agreement that, well, that's a local expense. That's a local issue that's with the Sheriff's Department and the school board. The safety of every child in Tennessee is our responsibility. And Governor, I thank you for leading us forward to make sure that from this point forward, with $140 million plus, that our schools will be safe, much safer than they were beforehand. Evil does exist. We can't stop a tornado from ripping through our neighborhoods. We can't stop a helicopter from crashing and destroying families for generations. But we can, we shall, and we will stop school shooters from ever entering into our schools. And if that message isn't clear enough, let it be heard from Mountain City to Memphis. If some evil person wants to try to kill our kids, you will be dead before you hit the front door. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
Governor Bill Lee coming back to the microphone.
Thank you, each one of you and all of you, for being here and standing up together to show Tennesseans that collectively the leadership in our office in the General Assembly is working to find the way forward to look not only at the solutions that we lay out today, but solutions that will be worked together in the weeks to come to make our state a safer place so that all of our kids can come home safely after school. Happy to open it up to questions.
Oh, we're going to stick right here, Belle, for these questions.
All right.
Y'all just speak up, just since there's a little bit of distance between the governor. Governor, a lot of the proposals made today involve hardening schools. There's some talk about mental health, suicidal or threatening to harm. But what about the other side of the equation? If someone is suicidal and threatening harm to others and or threatening the access to guns to assault rifles in Tennessee, could there be a right flag law and extremist protection order? Is that something that you would support? Is that something that will happen this session?
I think that one of the things that we probably all agree on is that a person who is a threat to themselves or a threat to others should not have access to weapons. And to the degree that we can do that, protecting the constitutional rights of our people at the same time, including that person, the way that we do that together is the way forward. We should look at ways to accomplish that. That's what I anticipate the members of the General Assembly will contemplate and work together to provide. There are any number of ways that can be accomplished, and we should look at all of those ways. And I expect that's what will happen the next few weeks.
There's a red flag law was passed within months after the parking shooting in Florida. I mean, do you expect to see something this session that would directly address people access to firearms if they are found to be type 6 or threats?
Yeah, what I expect is that there will be an opportunity to look at legislation around the country at ways that we can, in fact, do that very thing, which is make sure that those who are a threat to our people, to our children, do not have access to weapons, protecting the constitutional rights of Tennesseans at the same time. That is the way forward. Andy?
Governor, you said several years ago you and the General Assembly set aside
Sorry, we're unable to hear these questions, but I think the answers are very important to the Tennessee people.
So what we created is a mental health trust fund that would, for into perpetuity, provide continuous repetitive funding going forward. That's what that trust fund was set up for, and those the proceeds from that fund and that investment as a plan to provide funding for many years into the future, those funds will be used. But what we're talking about today is doubling the amount of money that we currently put in place for mental health school liaisons. And by the way, it's important to remember we're also proposing a Homeland Security agent in every county. So we would have a Homeland Security agent working together with local law enforcement and a mental health liaison in a school and an SRO in that school. There'd be a comprehensive county-by-county approach to look for challenges far before they enter a school. Multiple steps along the way of coordinated effort. That's how we will invest the dollars for mental health services going forward. But the answer is yes, we will in the future use those dollars in that trust fund that is established to create funds into perpetuity. Our plan is not to pull out of that trust fund. It's to use the proceeds from it. Marta.
So following up on Melissa's question, are you saying that you would support a red flag law?
I'm saying that I'm asking the General Assembly to bring forth a number of proposals to look at any proposal on the table that will accomplish what I think is most important, keeping those that are a danger away from weapons and protecting constitutional rights. That is something that can be done, and we should find a way to do that going forward. Whatever that looks like, I'm open to that.
So your SROs are a centerpiece of what you're talking about. District leaders will tell you that they want to hire SROs, but they cannot find them. There's a shortage. Just putting money in place for that is not enough.
Yeah.
How do we address the supply of that?
I think workforce challenges are enormous all across the state. We've worked really hard even to recruit troopers into the Highway Patrol. So we acknowledge that law enforcement recruitment is very difficult. But the very first step, you have to take away the restrictions to a district. The very first one is the dollars involved in hiring one of these officers. We'll work together with districts to work together with local law enforcement agencies to find ways to get these. We have put, if I'm not mistaken the numbers, we have put 200 SROs in schools since I came into office in 2019. There are SROs out there. We will work together with districts to help find them. But the most important thing to do is to make it, the most difficult part for them is to come up with the funding. Sorry.
Governor, if there is a school district or multiple school districts that are resistant to having SROs in some schools, potentially elementary schools, will they face any type of penalty or reduction or lack of funding?
Well, I think, for example, we penalize schools who don't want to comply with locking their exterior doors. We haven't looked yet in this at the details, or I haven't looked yet at the details of compliance, but I would expect every school district, I would expect every parent that has a school and a kid to hope that their school district and their individual school would use funds from the state to put an SRO in their school.
All right, hope we don't lose connection there. It looks like we might have lost connection there. So if you get it back, Belle, just let me know. Obviously, there's an ongoing press conference, and they're sucking a lot of juice. Do we have it back? Do you have it? Okay, yeah. Let me get over there. I think we can do it this way. Yeah, let's. I think we got it back, Belle. Let's pop it in there.
What channel are you on?
I'm on our media partner over there, Channel 4. I believe they. I reverted. We had another source. Yeah, there we go. There's our news channel 4.
I think that's one of the things we've got to look at over the next few days is the number of options that are out there. What are best practices, and what works best for our state, and that we look. My view is that we should come together with a thoughtful, practical solution that we can agree upon, and that's a very important component. This is obviously an issue that is emotional and charged, but we have to find, in order to move forward, we have to find something we can agree upon, and that's important for me going forward. Chris.
When you talk about, I know you said red flag laws and a lot of things, you want to keep separate guns from people who are dangerous. In your personal opinion, what is the best way to do that?
Oh, I don't have a personal opinion about the best way to do that. I have a strong belief that we should accomplish it. My thought is that we should look at a lot of options, and we should look at a lot of opportunities to accomplish that.
Quick follow-up.
Yep.
When you talk a little bit about this proposal specifically, nothing pertaining to firearms or guns or anything like that, was that discussed at all? And if so, was that even a serious conversation? Restrict or do something along those lines?
I think we ought to have real serious conversations about how we accomplish this, which I've brought forth, and that certainly requires more than a week. What we've proposed today are primarily significantly strengthening the component of the school safety bill that was already before the legislature, before this covenant event. It's important to remember we have been working on this significantly for a year, and thus the school safety bill. It's significantly enhanced by the announcements today, but we need to have a serious conversation about steps forward, and that certainly takes more than a week. Yeah. Kimberly? Yeah. Yep. Kim? Yeah.
So you said there is agreement that, anyone who supports themselves should not, have access to equipment. However, there's no proposal today.
Right.
You're looking to the legislature to bring forth maybe a solution. We have a chairman standing right behind you that said he's not going to listen to any gun bills for the rest of the session. How are you not expecting, this is not, people saying, are you just kicking the issue down the road? We'll just deal with school security, and hopefully people will just, basically, we'll just wait out the calls for maybe gun bills.
Yeah. No, I think, I think, as I said before, I think we all agree that there is, and that we all agree that we should find something that we can agree upon that accomplishes the things that I've already laid out. I think we can do that. I think we should do that. I think we will work really hard to accomplish that. I believe it's possible.
Have you asked Senator Hardenmeyer if he's going to consider any gun legislation?
I have not spoken with him about that. Yes, sir. Good.
I wanted to ask, Chris, what's your message to the Lawmakers school children who took the day off today and marched at the Capitol? And just what do you take with the message that they're sending to you?
Question is, what is your message to the school children who
protest? First thing I'll say to them is, and I say this to young people often, please don't let this be the last time you come to the Capitol. This is a government of the people, and when the people make their voices known, through peaceful protests, through meeting with legislators, to coming there to meet on a specific issue with a group of leaders. When the people engage with their elected officials, then a government of the people works the way it should. So I value input, especially young people who are engaging in the process. So it's important. I also would say to them that you're heard. You know what? There's no one in this state whose heart was not ripped apart by what happened a week ago. I can't imagine the heartache of some of the families that endured what they did last week. There is a desire to find a way forward that protects kids in schools in a better way than we have today. That's what I would say to them. We care very much about them coming home safely, and we will work together to find agreement on a way to move forward.
Yeah. The Attorney General negotiated a deal.
You're dialed into an ongoing press conference on Super Talk 99.7 WT, and the governor, Bill Lee, and many leadership in the legislative session are gathered to offer this press conference. I'm speaking over the questioner because you can't understand his question anyway.
I haven't spoken with the Attorney General about how he or specifics to what you suggest there. I think the bill that we have in place is as it should be.
The bill is the law?
The law that we have in place today, in my view, is a law as it should be.
So you disagree with the bill that would drop the carry age to 18? Do you disagree with the AG's decision to basically drop the age to 18?
I would simply say that I think the bill that I proposed and brought forward is a bill, by the way, that is designed for law-abiding citizens and is designed the way it should be for our state. You had, I don't want to leave anybody out. You had a question, sir.
That would be one more very emotional. I put my camera away many times to talk to people. Have you went out to visit that place and just feel what it is?
I drive by it every day, sir.
But if it stopped and just felt,
well, I drive by it every day, and I have attended the funeral of one of the victims. Every one of us, in our own unique way, grieves and deals with and walks through tragedy. Tennesseans are doing that. And as I've said, it evokes all kinds of emotion in people, and we've seen that throughout this week, and it's clearly understandable that those emotions have been evoked. I have been encouraged by the outpouring for the families and the ways that people have shown outreach to the victims. I feel the same way.
Last question, Blaze.
Yeah, just I arrived late, sorry about that, Governor, but is there any thought of going further on this legislation, or is this just the first step?
Yes, sir. I will say this is the first step, and there will be many steps. This is a very important one. It strengthens the work that we've already done to date, but we have a lot of conversations to have and a lot of opportunity to strengthen going forward. All right. Thank you all very much.
All right. There's Governor Bill Lee speaking before an assembled group of leadership within the General Assembly, to include Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally, Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton, House Majority Leader William Lamberth. I think I've got them all of them that spoke moments ago, offering their comments about the week that has been in the state of Tennessee, the Covenant shooting, and obviously steps forward. The governor offering several pieces of legislation as amendments to some legislation already presented in the General Assembly. We're going to go through some of that in just a moment. It involves hiring school resource officers, mental health money that would go into some of the challenges in mental health right now. It does not include any red flag laws. It does not include any banning of weapons or rifles. Some of those changes were called upon by youth that came forward and protested at the Capitol today. We'll discuss all of these things. Got to take a time out. It's 1:40 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, folks, it can be hard to find someone that you trust when it comes to large home repairs, and this obviously includes your air conditioner. Efficient Heating and Cooling is a small company, but I believe in their results. I've met with Jeff Eddy on multiple occasions, and I know that he has a service heart, and he wants results for you and your family. I trust that he's going to do what's right. Now, here's the reality. Most heating and air conditioning companies, and they don't even mean anything by this, they just default to telling you to replace the unit. And sometimes they're doing so 2, 3, 4 years ahead of time when you could get life out of that unit and save money in your pocket. If you need a second opinion on a unit, on something that you've been told from another company, come on over and talk to Jeff Eddy in Efficient Heating and Cooling. Allow him to give you that. Plus, when you call for maintenance, which I strongly encourage you to do this time of year for that AC, $125 is the most you'll ever pay, and that is with multiple units. Oftentimes, with a single unit, you're going to pay less than that anyway. Now, at some point, you have to replace, and when you do, they keep invoices small. They don't charge overtime, and they are a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric, an elite pro partner with Rheem. Go ahead and make the call that so many others have made to Efficient Heating and Cooling, 615-784-4424, 784-4424. Tell them Matt Murphy sent you. Super Talk 99.7 WTN 146, a little off kilter. That is because of a press conference held earlier this hour with most of the elected leadership in both the General Assembly and the governor's office, obviously, in attendance. We heard from Governor Bill Lee. We heard from Lieutenant Governor Randy McNally briefly. We heard from Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson. We heard from Speaker of the House Cameron Sexton. We heard from House Majority Leader William Lamberth. I'm told that there was but one Democrat in attendance at this presser today. Begs the question, why? The only Democrat was from Memphis. Antonio Parkinson was there in attendance. Other than that, no Democrats chose to attend the press conference announcing certain measures by the governor and by others in leadership in the General Assembly to attempt to begin the process to combat school shootings along the likes that we saw last week at Covenant School. The three proposals, as I wrote them down: one, armed security guard in every school in Tennessee, $140 million to be diverted for that purpose. That is a public school measure that would also include elementary schools in the city of Nashville. I wonder if the Nashville School Board is still on their high horse about elementary schools having SROs, or if they will allow for SROs, considering they can be so valuable in preventing these types of shootings. And God forbid, if somebody gets into the school, putting that shooter on the ground, DRT, where they should be. Number two, a grant fund that would include money going to public and non-public security, that public and non-public being public schools and non-public or private schools, for security purposes to further lock these schools down. That is grant money. And the third, an allocation of money for additional mental health resources to be provided at the point, at the point that they're most needed, which are obviously within our school systems. What do you say about these proposals? I'm opening up the phone lines right now, opening up the super text line right now. So we've heard from these protesters. I was down there earlier today. I was standing in front of the Tennessee Capitol, watched as the protest gather, watched as they, got the bullhorns together, and they were, doing a lot of chanting, saying no justice, no peace, and we will not be silenced, and what do we want? Gun control. When do we want it? Now. The governor was asked during the Q&A period about the issue of gun control and whether or not they've considered red flag laws or certain other measures. The governor very bluntly said all of that's on the table, but it has to be something that we can all agree on. It has to be something that we can all agree with. And toward that end, we're trying to, everything's on the table, but obviously if we present something, it would be something that we would want to go somewhere in terms of the will of the people that we represent. The vast majority of the people of the state of Tennessee recognize that people violence is the problem, not gun violence. In the meantime, 7597 writes in, super text line up and running. Seems like we've forgotten that Covenant is a private school. Can the state force armed guards on them? No. And just to clarify here, no. No one's forcing armed guards on any private property. The governor did say that they would offer grants for public and non-public security, and the form of that security, I imagine it could take a lot of different forms above and beyond actual SROs. I don't know, because obviously they've just announced the bill. It's not been, I've not vetted it, so I would not be able to tell you whether the grant money provided to the non-public schools, private schools, would be available for SROs or not. Now, Governor Lee on Friday signed a law that several Democrats voted against. Those three knuckleheads, those three snapperheads that were on the floor of the Tennessee House, they voted against this law that would allow private schools to enter into contracts with local law enforcement so they can hire school resource officers. This was just days after the shooting, and these knucklehead House members had already voted against this thing. Why? Before Justin Jones or Justin Pearson or Gloria Johnson make asses of themselves on the floor of the House of Representatives again, They might want to ask what your constituents might want to ask, why are you voting against putting people in place that could prevent the next tragedy? Maybe you were busy scrounging up a bullhorn that day. Speaking of those three, there are new developments along those lines, and we'll talk about it in just a moment at 1:52 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I am so excited to tell you about the new location to Tennessee Men's Clinic. That's right, for a long time, I've been relating that Tennessee Men's Clinic was the first in men-specific medical care to help you gentlemen with some of your energy loss and maybe some of those bedroom issues that come as a result of that energy loss. It's all about testosterone levels and the like. Here's the deal. They have one location in Nashville, and many of you have made yourself available to that location. Now they have one to the south in Cool Springs, and I'm pleased to tell you all about it. That location opening up for those to the south of my voice. Why not make an appointment to the Tennessee Men's Clinic and get that energy level back where it should be? It has helped so many men just like you. If you're in your 40s and you think it's just a byproduct of life that you don't have energy, think again. The Tennessee Men's Clinic can help. Go to the Tennessee Men's Clinic website. It's just that, TennesseeMen'sClinic.com. You can also give them a call. Schedule the appointment like so many others have made. 615-208-9090. 208-9090 for Tennessee Men's Clinic. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A couple of additional moments before we head off into hour number 3. Do not forget the drive this afternoon from 3 until 7 o'clock with Brian Wilson, covering the goings-on in downtown Nashville, Middle Tennessee, affecting the entire state, involving mental health issues, securing our schools, and the possibility of red flag laws. The governor was non-committal when asked directly about red flag laws. We'll talk about it in a moment. And several of you are going after the governor on the super text line, and I'll tell you exactly the nature of those accusations and wonder, is he the real enemy here? We'll talk about that next, coming up on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Here comes the news.
It is 2 o'clock. I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 60 degrees right now, cloudy, a little rainy and splashy outside currently. Weather coming up in just a few minutes. Governor Bill Lee spoke today and proposed 3 new steps into making Tennessee schools safer and more secure places, and it's in form of a budget amendment. Here's the first step.
Our budget amendment will include $140 million for public schools to hire SROs and highly trained guards. With this funding, we're taking the burden off of teachers and schools and districts. There is no excuse to not have a guard at every school.
Some other parts of the budget proposal are $30 million to expand a statewide homeland security network with 122 agents serving students at both public and private schools. Along that are other things such as $20 million for public school security upgrades and $7 million for private school upgrades. And it's also now been reported that that shooter at Covenant School last Monday fired 152 rounds from a rifle in a 9mm handgun, according to Metro Police. Inside of the school, there's still no clear motive, according to police. Over the nation's capital, President Biden has been asked now 6 times about the indictment of his predecessor and 2020 campaign opponent Donald Trump, and he has declined to weigh in. The White House says it is watching closely, though. Karen Travers.
The White House says it's in touch with state and local authorities and monitoring closely for any potential threats of violence in response to former President Trump's arraignment in New York City Tuesday. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby told reporters Monday the administration is prepared should there be any need to respond, but Kirby said they are hopeful there won't be. Kirby said if there are protests, the administration wants them to be peaceful and said violence has no place in the U.S.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Hour number 3 right now. Matt Murphy Show continues. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Thank you for being with us on air, on your app, or on TV. More on that in a moment. It's 2:05. As we continue dissecting what went down earlier today in Middle Tennessee in Nashville. The protest, a student march presenting itself as an anti-gun rally or anti-gun protest, eventually made its way to the Cordell Hull building, where they occupied a couple of the building floors for an hour or so. And eventually, I don't know if they've dispersed or not, but I assume that they did. Lawmakers had a press conference at 1 o'clock, and we carried it live on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. So I want to real quickly, because there's a couple of pieces of information that are coming in right now from the Metro Nashville Police Department. There's another piece that came directly from Cameron Sexton's office, I guess, regarding what the 3 lawmakers last week were engaged in and what some of the consequences would be, and what Cameron Sexton described as potentially at least an insurrection. We'll get into that. We'll get into some of the specifics of the governor's proposal. We've also got unrelated stories to tell you about today, to include, obviously, the president of the United States is making a trek to New York City. He will be arraigned tomorrow. The mayor of New York City is begging for peace there, warning protesters not to get unruly, saying that while he understands addressing reporters at a press briefing, Eric Adams warned prospective protesters disorder and lawlessness will not be tolerated by the New York City Police Department that will be on scene outside of the courthouse in Lower Manhattan as Trump arrives to be fingerprinted and photographed tomorrow morning. Control yourselves, he said. New York City is our home and not a playground for your misplaced anger. It's a fascinating thing to me, and it pisses me off, and there's no other way to say it, that if I'm upset about some political shenanigans that are going on, suddenly my anger is misplaced. But if these kids are angry about guns, no matter how misplaced I think their anger might be, it's a completely valid thing for them to take to the streets. It's a completely valid thing for them to scream, no justice, no peace, despite the fact that the Justice Department has nothing to do with this. It's a completely valid emotional piece to suggest that their anxiety is high, therefore their protest will be robust. But if I take to the streets and protest about some of this when I protest about the ridiculous nature of where we've gone with the transgender movement right now and how that might lend itself to the radicalization of some of these individuals, I can't even talk about this person in that way without being accused of being transphobic. I heard a hell of a lot this morning at that rally about guns. I didn't hear one thing about mental health. Not one thing about mental health. Why? Why? And for my resident super texter that tells me that I yell too much, that was yelling. That was yelling. I was yelling there. I had my rant pants on. And rightly so. We see this slow walk, this slow descension into madness, where if you're on one side of the political argument, you can say any nonsensical, ridiculous, obscene thing that you want, and it's all chalked up to passion or the emotion of the moment. Because according to their narrative, the cause is right. So you can make any nonsense statement you want to make, and you're allowed to get away with it. If you dare to take to the streets to protest a legit banana republic move, like Alvin Bragg trying to squash Joe Biden's primary political opponent before he's able to get to a primary, no pun intended, by next year, I mean, you're squashing his chief political rival on flimsy, trumped-up charges. And if I get upset at that in any way, my anger, according to Eric Adams, is misplaced. Well, I could have said the same about so many of the youthful protesters outside of the Tennessee Capitol today as they were demanding the elimination of assault weapons, something that none of them, I dare suggest, could define. The leftists in America think they've caught on to something when they demand that people like yours truly define wokeness. I most certainly can define wokeness. And will, if asked. Well, that can, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I want you to define assault weapons. Thank you very much. And once we're done defining assault weapons, which so many of these young people said that they wanted banned earlier today, I want to go a step further, and I want you to tell me what we're going to do about the 98% of murders that are committed with no assault weapon present. Steve says my yelling is just. I appreciate that, Steve.
There's always an assault weapon present. It might be an assault hammer or assault saw or assault knife, but it's always an assault weapon.
Well, I mean, I guess so. I guess I should say assault rifle.
They all have to be banned.
Yeah, 98% of the murders that happened in the United States of America in the last measurable year, according to the FBI, were committed with something that wasn't an assault rifle. Now, it might have been a different type of assault weapon, like, I don't know, a hammer, a crowbar, or something or another, or a pistol for that matter. But it was not an assault rifle. But we're focused on assault rifles today. We'll get to the pistols tomorrow because that would be the next march, friends. By the way, the woman responsible for the death of 6 people, the woman that doesn't get mentioned, and I'm not trying to glorify the actions of this individual who was obviously mentally deranged, but they're ignoring the profile of this person because the profile doesn't fit the narrative that they want to present. I want to know what the hell the manifesto has to say about any of this. And toward that end, we have an update from the Metro Nashville Police Department. So, Metro Nashville PD has put out an unsatisfactory update today. I say unsatisfactory because I've read it, and I think you'll agree when you read it. Or when I read it to you, which I'm about to do. Now, I try to understand that this investigation is only a week old. I'm attempting to give every measure the benefit of the doubt that I can to the Metro Nashville Police Department. But it feels to me as if the motivations of this killer are slowly but surely being swept under the rug to the point that we'll forget that apparently this person gave us a clear concept of what they were doing and why they were doing it prior to actually committing the actions. To wit, here's the piece. The ongoing investigation into the March 27th murders of 6 persons inside the Covenant School continues to show, from all information currently available, that the killer, and they named the killer, acted totally alone. In the collective writings by Hale found in her vehicle in the school parking lot and others found later in the bedroom of her home, she documented in journals her planning over a period of months to commit mass murder at the Covenant School. The writings remain under careful review by the Metro Nashville Police Department and the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit based in Quantico, Virginia. The motive for, they name her, actions have not been established and remains under investigation by the Homicide Unit in consultation with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. It is known that Hale considered the actions of other mass murderers. The investigation shows that Hale fired a total of 152 rounds from the time she shot her way into the school until she was killed by police. That includes, by the way, 126 .556 rifle rounds and 26 9mm rounds. 2 officers, Officer Rex Engelbert and Officer Michael Colazzo, fired upon the killer and killed her. Engelbert discharged a total of 4 .556 rounds from his rifle. Officer Michael Colazzo discharged a total of 4 rounds from his department-issued 9mm pistol. Scores of police personnel from a number of components responded to the Covenant call last Monday. The department's professional wellness section is conducting critical incident debriefings, including daily welfare checks for involved personnel. The MNPD's homicide unit is leading the investigation into the murders of 6 victims. The cold case unit is working with the TBI in an investigation of the fatal police shooting of Hale. And that's it. What? And I know a lot of police officers listen to this show. And I thank every one of you. And I support every one of you. Unless you're a road cop or a bad cop, but whatever. Dismiss that for a minute. Can someone tell me what investigation we're protecting right now? Anytime there is information to be divulged to the public regarding something like this, it is sensitive in its nature because you do not know how people will react to it. But I know very well what will happen if we begin not disseminating this sort of sensitive data or information. You never know what political entities are working behind the scenes to prevent you from knowing the truth. I'm not trying to sound conspiratorial right now. But today, it's the Metro Nashville Police Department or the FBI determining that we don't need to know some of this information. And they're blaming it on a, quote, ongoing investigation being jeopardized. And I can't figure out what the hell that means. But tomorrow, it might be the Democrats withholding information about January 6th in the interest of public safety. Or it might be the Biden administration withholding information about a Chinese balloon that most certainly was spying on the American people after they told us it wasn't spying on the American people, and they tried to keep that information from us too. For the entirety of America's history, we've been told that we don't need to know. Because, security. Now, I'm not lumping this in with that necessarily, but I'm telling you this. It is a common thread between individuals of any political stripe and of varying degrees of worthiness. It is a common thread through these entities that they determine on quite a number of occasions over the arc of America's history that we don't know information, need to know information that we very well do need to know. Because it's our country, not theirs. Bill brings up another good example. Thank you, Bill. I just noticed that out of the corner of my eye. The FBI decided in the winter of 2019, when they got the laptop, that we didn't need to know about that either. Now, didn't they? And for over a year, they decided we didn't need to know about that. And then when we found out about it, through other measures outside of the FBI, they decided that they were going to insist that certain entities tamp down that information by calling it misinformation and lies. Now, I don't trust the government as much as I can throw them, and that includes parts of the government that I believe in and parts of the government that I support, like the Metro Nashville Police Department. No, you need to tell us what's in that manifesto, and you need to do it sooner rather than later. Because as we walk down this road, the conversation more and more and more goes to guns, 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 as it always does with the political left. And I'm not against having that conversation with the political left. I think I can turn a few heads and maybe change a few minds. But my goodness, are we not looking into the motivations of this killer as it applies in this individual case, and particularly as it applies to the transgender issues that we're talking about so often on this show and in this community and in this country nowadays? I believe that there are people that are legitimately gender dysphoric, but I also believe that it has become fashionable to blame all of your issues, especially if you're a youngster, where hormones are raging, where changes in your life are happening rapidly, where there's never a sense of normalcy or satisfaction, where you're angst-ridden already, and you add a little sexual confusion into the mix, and then you bring in authority figures that promise to these youngsters that they have all of the answers to every life issue that you've ever had in this one simple thing. You're not a boy, you're a girl. You're not a girl, you're a boy. And they're sold, even with gender dysphoria, they are sold a bill of goods that life's going to become just A-OK. So much better if you just listen to us. Now, am I saying that that's a motivational factor in this case? I don't know, because we've not seen the information, and we deserve to see the information. Hey, Mac Maury's back in the newsroom, and I hear him back there, and he's like, I got to get in here, but Matt's not taking a breath. What do you got over there, man?
We've got, right now, Tennessee Democratic lawmakers speaking on what Governor Bill Lee just spoke about and gun reformation. This is Gloria Johnson right now live. If you want me to...
Yeah, I want some of that. Give me some of that.
Yep.
Parliamentary inquiry. They could not answer the question. I asked them. They just said no. I asked them to cite the rule. They could not cite the rule. They are doing this without following our House rules and our policies. I know, and my colleagues, I believe, I don't want to speak for them, knew I was breaking a House rule. We've had folks on the floor for indictments. We've had admitted child molesters on the floor. We have had members that peed in each other's office chairs. Yep. We have someone who has illegally prescribed drugs to their cousin mistress, and nothing ever happened to those folks. But for breaking a House rule, for standing up to speak the people who were there that day, we are getting these punishments. I tried to come in Thursday night after I went to dinner. My garage pass was not working. My pass to the... No one told me that my garage pass was cut off. No one told me that my badge to the building was cut off. My scooter was inside the building. I needed it at home. I don't always need it at home on the weekend. I needed it this past weekend because there was a big downtown event that went all over downtown. I was not able to have it. I was not able to do the things that I needed to do. They could have let us know that this was taking place. We will continue to speak up. I know that we broke a rule and there will be consequences, but why is it that no one else has received consequences, certainly like we're receiving? Justin.
Thank you. I think it's no coincidence that we're gathered here today on the 55th anniversary of when Dr. King gave his last speech in Memphis, Tennessee. And in that speech, he said that somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest for right.
That's right.
55 years ago today. That's what we were doing. Our mics were cut off throughout the week whenever we tried to bring up the issue of gun violence. When I went outside to support those protesting,
because they were out of order,
cut
obviously.
off my voting machine. The first time I've ever seen that happen. The speaker refused to let us talk during welcoming and honoring to welcome our constituents, the thousands gathered outside the state capitol building. And so after multiple
This is Justin Jones.
offenses of being silenced as duly elected representatives, each of us represent over 70,000 people. That's when we walked up to the well to say that the voices of our people matter. Yeah. The voices of those gathered matter. And so I want to bring this back to what is the issue at hand. We are members who were standing in the well telling the speaker and our colleagues that kids should not be murdered in school. Yeah. And rather than address that issue, the speaker has spent more time on Twitter this weekend talking about a fake insurrection than he did about the deaths of 6 people, including 9-year-old children. He spent more time backtracking his statements about insurrection. Make no mistake, media, when he said people were rushing the doors, he was talking about those moms and children and preschoolers and high school students gathered outside, and you have a responsibility as journalists to tell the truth and to call a lie a lie. The Speaker of the House, one of the most powerful men in our state, went on Fox News and national media and lied to the people of this nation. Right. You have an obligation as journalists to tell the truth. All right,
I'm about done with that for now. I know that Mac will continue to monitor it. That is Representative Justin Jones speaking about Cameron Sexton and his actions. Cameron Sexton gave his opinion about what was happening on the floor of the House of Representatives last week and said that it amounted to an insurrection. By definition, they were disrupting the legal proceedings of the House of Representatives. As elected officials, they are bound. They swear an oath to abide by the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the state of Tennessee, and the rules of the body that they represent. So Justin Jones can, almost said it. He can engage in Bravo Sierra with someone else, and he can do it somewhere else, not here. It's 2:25 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My friends at Savory Spice were giving out a delicious salt blend that I absolutely love last Friday at Bold Patriot Brewing. Hope you got your hands on some. It's called Alderwood Smoked Sea Salt, and I love it. I'll tell you what, I like that. I love the salty flavor, but I also like the smoked flavor that goes along with it. They've got so many different blends at Savory Spice. I had Jason, loyal listener and loyal texter to the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk, come up to me on Friday and said, "What is that you were talking about that you and your wife made with Savory Spice?" I said, "It's the Sunday pot roast, and you've got to try it. It's delicious. You add onions and carrots and meat, and, you can do potatoes as well. Then you add the spice blend already pre-prepared by Savory Spice, and you just let it go to town." And he did it, and he wrote me back and said, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." It was delicious. You could be next to try some of these incredible blends. Oh, by the way, don't forget about the Caesar. They have a Caesar blend that's going on right now that you can sprinkle on various things, and you can also make Caesar salad dressing out of. That is fabulous. 2 locations. One at L&L Market in Nashville, the other in Franklin, just off the square. Tell them I sent you to Savory Spice.
Some budget amendments announced from Governor Bill Lee concerning school safety in Tennessee. Plus, New York City tightening some security right now ahead of Trump's historic court appearance. That and more 2:30.
In mere seconds, we're going to get to. I'm so excited about Mac Morey's comments. Actually, no, we're a little waylaid because of some of the comments by the, I almost called them the Gang of Three, but I don't want to besmirch the good name of Dan Mandis, Ken Weaver, Johnny B.
That would have been a little insulting.
Yeah, that's a little too close to home because they have the Gang of Three Amigos every morning at 5:30 and 8:30 respectively. So, yeah, this Gloria Johnson and Gloria and the Two Justins, which would make a great name for a band, in my opinion. Gloria and the Two Justins are out making hay while the sun shines, claiming they did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong at all. Then why'd you bring a bullhorn? That's the only question. Why did you bring a bullhorn? If you didn't know, here's as easily as I can describe it. These three individuals brought a bullhorn to the well of the House of Representatives where there were microphones.
But do you think they said they didn't do anything wrong?
Wasn't that their excuse making? That's what I heard.
Yeah, that's not what I was hearing her saying, but,
she said they didn't break any rules.
No, she did say exactly that.
That she didn't break any rules.
They broke House rules. She said that exactly.
Okay, I misheard her. I heard her say that they did not break any rules. So I completely misheard her. Well, here's what I do know. I do know that you don't bring a bullhorn to the well of the House of Representatives if you don't think that you're in violation of House rules. I'll go back and re-listen to it, Mac. We'll listen to the news right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.232 Mac Morey with your top stories right now. 60 degrees and a cloudy day. Weather in just a couple minutes. Governor Bill Lee spoke today and proposed 3 new steps into making Tennessee schools safer and more secure places in form of budget amendments.
We'll establish a grant fund to make significant physical security upgrades at both public and non-public schools all across the state. Third, we will increase funding for mental health resources. Double the amount of funding that we have for our school-based mental health liaisons so that we not only have one in every county, but that we have multiple in many counties.
Another implementation Lee wants is more SROs, at least one of them in each school. That would come in the form of a $140 million grant fund. Some other parts of the budget proposal are $30 million to expand a statewide homeland security network with 122 agents serving students at both public and private schools. And it's now been reported that the shooter last Monday at Covenant School fired 152 rounds from a rifle and a 9mm handgun, according to Metro Police. There's still no clear motive stated, and some of these budget amendments Governor Bill Lee and other Tennessee lawmakers hope prevent anything like that from ever happening again here in Rocky Top State. New York City tightening security ahead of Trump's historic court appearance. Derek Dennis.
Rolling street closures, barricades, and a blanket recommendation from Mayor Eric Adams.
If you usually drive, we're staying and take public transportation.
All ahead of former President Trump's court appearance. Trump Tower in Midtown and the courthouse in Lower Manhattan both facing lockdowns. Protesters being told to watch their behavior or be subject to arrest.
Violence and destruction are not part of legitimate, lawful expression, and it will never be tolerated in our city.
Police Commissioner Keishant Sewell saying there are no specific threats to the city for now, and the goal is to have minimal disruption to city life.
And that is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
All right, guess what is back in Nashville this weekend? I'll tell you what, it's the Nashville Home Show. Discover, plan, and do the Nashville Home Show. This Thursday, April 6th through Saturday, April 8th is at the Music City Center. 3 days only for great deals, new ideas, practical advice from trusted experts. Get eye-opening tips and tricks from HGTV's The Laundry Guy, Patrick Richardson. Plus, you'll see the Rock Place Bellegarde Outdoor Living Showdown for backyard inspirations from kitchen to bath to landscapes and so much more. You don't want to miss the Nashville Home Show. It's kind of a sign that spring is here and summer's right behind. Buy tickets early and save at NashvilleSpringHomeShow.com. The Nashville Home Show is the ideal place to find ideas to get great practical advice for what you're looking for, from kitchens to baths and outdoor landscapes. Plus, invariably, these booths give up so much swag. It's all going to be at the Nashville Home Show Thursday, April 6th through Saturday, April 8th, and we want you to be there. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. The Matt Murphy Show continues. A lively day. A lot of things going on in Middle Tennessee, particularly in downtown Nashville. A protest early this morning, a press conference early this afternoon. And we are here until 3 o'clock when we hand off to the drive-in, Brian Wilson. Matt Murphy right now, Brian on the way. Now, Mac Morey's back in the newsroom. Morey, I listened, and I misheard. She said... I heard the line from Representative Gloria Johnson where she said all we did was break a rule. And what I heard is we didn't break a rule. So that's my bad, and I appreciate you correcting. Correct me anytime, Maury. Anytime.
I felt bad.
No, it's all good. It's like that's exactly what she said. She said exactly the different thing. That's fine. I misheard her. That's all good. I get on my rants, and all I'm doing is
you were wrong.
I'm laser.
You were wrong, sir.
Hey,
wrong.
Can you play the music? Play the music. Just play the music. Let's do it. Right. Maury was right. Maury was right. Murphy was wrong. That's right. That's all good. Yes, for their troubles, for the minor rule breaking that they admitted to, the infraction that they admitted to, Representative Gloria Johnson and the two Justins have been removed. Well, I'll just read you the letter. April 3rd, 2023. This looks like I was told over the weekend. Actually, I was told on Friday. And I confirmed it over the weekend through my sources at the Capitol that there was strong consideration to expel all three of these individuals from the House of Representatives, which they have the authority to do. What happens is if you violate rules or if you break procedure or protocol, there is a process by which the body can vote you expelled from the House of Representatives. And that expulsion lasts for the remainder of the legislative session. Then the district in which you serve has to have or is to have a special election. Now, the individuals that just got expelled are candidates for that election. In other words, they can run to go back into the House, but they have to be reelected. So you have to take it back to the people that elected them in the first place. April 3rd, 2023. So it looks like this is less of a punishment, but the punishment that they're going with, although something could happen when they reconvene tonight. Who knows? Dear Representative Johnson, I'm assuming that there were also letters that written out said, Dear Representative, the two Justins. That's Justin Jones and Justin Pearson. We call them the two Justins. Gloria's going on tour with them. You have been removed from all House standing committees and subcommittees and any committee on which you serve as designee. Please let me know if you have any questions. Sincerely, Tammy Letzler, Chief Clerk, Tennessee House of Representatives. And that's it. So, I like this play. If you expel these three, you make martyrs out of them more so than they already are. In this way, by removing them from committees, by removing them from subcommittees, and by reminding them privately that there is nothing that requires the chair to recognize them on the floor of the House of Representatives, you can quite easily make these three non-people and be done with it without giving them the martyrdom. Did I say that correctly? Martyrdom. Yeah, it's tough for me. Without giving them the martyrdom of expelling them. You are now, to use the John Wick parlance, you are now excommunicado. And you are not to enjoy the trappings of the Tennessee Capitol any longer.
Careful, we're getting into salt finger
territory
with John Wick reference.
Well, he did kill three people with a pencil.
Yes, in a bar.
In a bar with a pencil. That's my favorite line in Wick, by the way. I saw him kill three men in a bar with a pencil. And then he screams, with a bleeping pencil. That's right. That's Cameron Sexton. He just killed three with a pen. There you go.
That's brilliant.
Cameron Wick making it happen. Tennessee House of Representatives telling Gloria and the two Justins they can go pound sand. Next time they'll be heard from in the well of the House of Representatives will be, well, sometime down the line. Jason's in Mount Juliet. He's been holding. Hey, Jason, thank you for calling. How are you?
Hey, I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Hey, I noticed earlier when I was listening to Bill Lee, he brought up the word Homeland Security. Would that mean technically that the school SROs will be answering to the Department of Homeland Security? Would that be a change of custody?
No. I mean, I don't recall the specific language that you're referencing. Are you talking about the legislation to get an armed security guard in every school?
Yeah. Did you hear him mention the part about a person from the Department of Homeland Security? That's what I was asking.
Yeah, I don't recall that turn of phrase. I'll have to go back and listen. Obviously your concern is that we would be abdicating what is state authority and turning it over to the federal government?
Yes, very much so. And what kind of Pandora's box that could open?
I'll have to go back and look before I judge it. I would have a hard time believing that was the suggestion. I think more so this is a matter of funding individual school districts in the public sector in order to make sure that it is not for a lack of money that they decide not to hire SROs, which are more often than not off-duty police officers, right?
I would hope so, but it would be a matter of who they answer to, which he did indicate that there would be someone in that department who would be making those calls.
Yeah, see, I just didn't hear that. I'll have to re-listen. And I did not hear the governor. It would just be hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to sit here and believe that the governor publicly announced that he's going to hand the authority over to the federal government. That just doesn't sound like something that this governor would do.
No, I didn't hear him say it that way, but if you put it all together in context, it would indicate.
But Jason, why would he do that?
I don't know, but Matt, we've been seeing a lot of our elected officials doing things that don't make sense lately.
I know that I'm new, but I don't understand this. And I'm not fussing at you, Jason, at all. I promise you I'm not. But I don't understand this desire that many conservative Tennesseans have to turn Bill Lee into the bad guy. And maybe it's because I haven't been around long enough to understand it.
Well, I agree with Bill Lee. I like Bill Lee as our governor, and I'm glad for everything that he's doing to stand up for the community and against the woke culture. But at the same time, I have to still pay attention to everything he's doing and pay attention to the details.
Hey, I've got an idea, Jason. This is a good suggestion from John, and I want to employ this suggestion. Is Mac still over there? All right, Jason, yep. I'm gonna figure this out. Hey, Jason heard something in Governor Bill Lee's press conference, and I can't remember what can you? I'm just. Apparently, Mac can correct me on every time.
Okay.
That's John's joke, not my joke. John joked about this. Matt, you can just ask Mac about anything you can't remember hearing. That's what he said. So that's what I was trying to do.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, he did make mention of Homeland Security.
I correct you one time.
Can I lighten the mood for just a moment now that we're already not doing that? So, two things. One, have either of you ever thought that it's the right move when you get into an Uber to get into the front seat?
No. When you're in a service vehicle, it's standard to get in the back seat.
So I don't want to misremember the quote here, so I'm going to be vague on the quote in the aftermath of this story I'm about to tell you. So Dan and I decide we're going down to the protest because we want to make sure that we see it with our own eyeballs and don't rely on some of these media sources to, tell us what's going on. And we decide to Uber. We're not that far away from the state capitol, but parking down there is just a beast. You guys know downtown Nashville, whatever. So Dan says, I'll get an Uber. Okay, Dan's getting the Uber. So we go down. We're waiting on the Uber. The Uber pulls up. Here it comes. And Dan goes first and goes right to the front seat. Which I think, okay, that's a move, I guess. That's a power move, but I don't know what we're doing. And he actually said something along the lines of, I'll sit in front. I'm like, sit in front? I didn't know what he's talking about. So I get into the back, and as I'm getting into the back and Dan's about to get into the front, the guy who had a slight Indian accent, so I'm not making fun, goes, no, back, get back. He starts telling him, back, get back.
He's like, whoa,
okay.
You do realize that when Dan got a limo for after his wedding, that when they got to the limo, he told the driver to get out that he was going to drive.
Oh, did he now?
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm, yeah. So Mandis then, so this was what, I told Mac this story, I didn't tell you this part. So Mandis then, I'm like, I'll scoot, and Dan starts to get on my side, but then he decides not to, and he decides to go around and get in on the other side. And as he's going around, the guy in this driving, our Uber driver said, first time in the car? And I said, first time in a car? He goes, no, like an Uber. And I went, well, maybe. So
he's like, this guy doesn't know what's going on.
And so Dan's like, she's like, is that not cool? And I said, I've never tried to get into the front of an Uber when there was room in the back. There have been a couple of times where you've got, 4 people or whatever, and somebody has to sit in the front, but that's a have to. not a want to. And Mandis said, and gosh, you just want to hug the guy. You just want to give him a hug. You just want to hug him. He said, well, I try to always sit in the front because I don't want to be pretentious. And I think he said, I remember saying, like I'm being chauffeured around. And I thought, well, isn't that what an Uber is?
That's exactly what an Uber is doing.
Isn't that what we're doing? Oh, that's so good. And just picturing him and Amy, and he's like, Amy, you have to sit in the front.
But
Dan goes into a restaurant, and he's like, just show me where the kitchen is. I'll cook it myself. There's something about it that's very endearing because Dan doesn't want to be pretentious. He doesn't want to stand. So he's honest when he comes into that. Is he's playing it like I'm just the average guy. I don't want to be. I'm not. I'm like, Dan, you're not sitting back here with a top hat and a monocle on. We're just driving to the Capitol. Anyway.
We paid the man.
Yeah, I mean, we are paying him to drive us somewhere. So technically, he is our chauffeur, if we want to call it that. All right, if you guys are listening now, I'm out of time, but I encourage you to contact Nashville's Morning News in the morning and ask Dan about the Great Dane that we saw just outside of the Capitol and see what he says. Just ask him. Just say, Dan, Matt told me to ask you about the Great Dane you saw yesterday at the Capitol, just to see what he says. It's 2:52 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.